I was just saying, like, so during the season of life after college, when I was like a full-time vocational ministry person,
Yeah.
I didn't think this way as much. But towards the end of that time, and then really after that, when I was trying to figure out like what is my kind of career going to be and all that, I was maybe, I mean, there's like a healthy way to approach what does it look like for me to like make a living, earn an income, be a contributing part of like the community. And there's a lot that's wrapped up in there. But you know um, I think you can go to kind of extremes, which we tend to do a lot of times. We're on the extreme of like extreme faith, like I'm
Yeah.
just praying for all my needs and like trusting God to provide in whatever, who knows what kind of way. I have no real plan. There's
Yeah.
that. Then there's, the, I won't say the opposite of that, but then hyper focus on planning and strategizing and like, charting out your career path with the most, potential to change jobs or whatever as you can kind of climb the ladder or start your business or whatever it is to get over 100,000, get over 200,000, get over 500,000. I don't know, whatever the meaningful number is for you.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe I was swinging a little bit hard on that side, and then it starts becoming like everything you do with your time, you're starting to evaluate with like, what is this really contributing to me getting that raise or promotion or
Right.
taking that next step, in my business. And I think there's some good things with that, but then there's also kind of a shadow side to that as well. And just
Yeah.
it's just funny how long it takes to, at least for me, to try to figure out like, okay, well now, I've got this kind of career going for 8+ years, um, and a lot of other, family responsibilities and things. So then it's like, well, what does it look like for me to try to, volunteer, for lack of a better term, in some meaningful capacity that resonates with my gift? So for the particular example of like, if I want to play an instrument on the worship team for just even one week, it's like, um, well, I need 4 hours available basically on like a weeknight to do a rehearsal and travel time. And then I need to be able to show up, 2 hours before the start of the service. If there's two services, then I'm going to be gone for 6+ hours on a Sunday. That's
Yeah.
10 hours, so
Right.
that becomes really challenging to try to, I mean, if you're approaching it from the framework of like, what is the value of this for my like income producing potential, it's really hard to make a straight line between the two. And so um, maybe there was some of that going on for the last 6 years, but I'm kind of trying to come back around to like my kids are at an age now where they don't require the same kind of like constant supervision
Right.
that, so that creates a little bit more um, space for things. But I don't know, we'll see.
It's such a balanced mindset, right? Because there's a wisdom aspect of kind of, I would call what you're talking about like an ROI mindset, right? Like return on investment
Yeah.
mindset, right? Which I think is a prudent way to live, in so many ways. And yet, like those of us who are called and have heard the call of God and are trying to walk with Him, know that there are times that we have a good return on our investment, and then there's times that we don't.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think about this. I process this with clients often, where things become very transactional, right?
Hmm.
And the return on investment mindset for a lot of dynamics with work and things like that is brilliant. Relationally, it's catastrophic.
Mm.
Where I'm, if a person goes, well, I'm going to invest this time into my marriage, and the other person needs to invest back a similar amount, then now we've created a transactional relationship rather than a covenant relationship.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting because one of the verses that just continues to just kind of challenge me, it's such a simple verse and I think it's often overlooked, but is that he causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust,
Yeah.
right? Like in a way, like God
Where
wastes.
Jesus was like talking about the Father in that.
Right, right, yeah. Jesus is talking about the Father, and he says he causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. And I go, that's if you come at that with an ROI mindset, then that's a waste,
Right.
right? But there's something covenantal about what he's communicating, his commitment, right? And so then being able to, and I think we do have to operate in the return on investment mindset in so many different
Hmm.
venues and environments of our life,
Hmm.
but then being able to differentiate and being able to move back and forth, whether it's ministry, family stuff, our marriages, friendships, and not apply the same kind of principle. um, and I see that actually as a pretty massive thing right now. As you know, like the idea of boundaries has picked up so much in the last decade, right? And
Yeah.
inside the church and outside the church, and there's a protectiveness that is right about boundaries, but boundaries very quickly makes things transactional too.
Yeah.
And so there's just that, like, how do we learn in our own, our 3 foot world, right? Like what we can control, what we can kind of put hands on. Where do we actually have some kind of return on investment mindset versus where do we have a covenantal mindset
Hmm.
and way of relating, right?
Hmm.
So that's just what makes, that's what I think of when you talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would say too, it's so important to just, you know, in terms of investment, like investing in just relationships, like even just a few close relationships that could help you like really navigate these kinds of like I don't want to say like dilemmas, but you're trying to figure out like, well, what's a good choice here with this opportunity that's presented to me? Like I could do this thing that's going to take all this time and energy and effort, and most likely I'm not going to get anything, at least immediate kind of returns.
Yeah.
But like, hey, somebody to like walk alongside you through that. Like what do you see? Like tell me, do you think like this, this opportunity, is it like consistent with like the sort of nature and character of God, and with what you know to be true about me, and like the best use of my like gifts and my talents to add value to others? And just like kind of like that kind of a relational environment is just so valuable, I think, for trying to navigate these tricky, because it's kind of like like that verse in Jeremiah where I think most translations say like the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things, like who can know it, which is, you know,
It's
kind
not the
of a
best translation.
it's kind of a rough translation, but I think like the real spirit of it is that the heart can be a kind of a tricky place. It's sometimes difficult for us to really know like what's really driving this thing. And I
Right.
think that's where like, those kind of trusted friends can be so helpful in helping to reflect back to you, like truth. And kind of going back to our conversation last time too about, I think we ended on like exploring kind of the relationship between identity, like kind of what it is, where it comes from, and belonging.
Yeah.
And it's almost like in some ways, you can't really separate the two, the same community and relationships, I think, that help you navigate some of these kinds of, life choices, if you will, from big to small, um, are likely also the same people that are shaping, an identity in you, helping you get more clear revelation or understanding of identity, um, because of that kind of like closer belonging. Um, so it seems like we kind of arrived at I don't know about a conclusion, but at least like the prevailing idea that identity and belonging are not the same thing, but very closely related. And I don't know if you can have one without the other. So it's kind of an interesting idea too, because if you were to try to imagine like a person that's just totally isolated, no other people around, you know, what what would identity be like for them? I would imagine that they could still have one, you
Yeah.
know, because they're still human. Um, it's going to be a really different experience for sure. But the question I was just kind of toying with or pondering was, can you even really know your identity outside of, you know, a community, as to whatever that means, like one, two, three people, or, you know, a broader kind of tribe, if you will.
So it's interesting as we talk about this. I'm getting ready to present next week to. I'm doing guest lecturing at a college, and
Oh, nice.
they
Congrats,
are,
man.
yeah, they they've asked me. They're talking about social health and um, different things like that, and so I'm just kind of talking in through some of those things, and um, but we also this is something that I study about and talk about often. And it's going to seem like maybe a tangent, but I promise it'll come back. We're just going
Stay
to take a
with me.
secret route for a minute. So, um, but okay, so in psychology, there's Freud was kind of the modern father of modern psychology, right? And so he created what's called psychoanalysis, and he's what's considered first generation psychoanalysis. And then there's a few more generations. You get ego psychology, and then you get self psychology as well. And you
Would that
just
be
kind of
like,
progress
is that
through.
Carl Jung?
Jung was involved in that as well, yeah, in some of those later iterations. Well, we're into what's understood as the fifth generation now,
Wow.
and fifth generation is called intersubjectivity psychoanalysis. And so the idea about that is it interweaves perfectly with attachment theory. I'm not sure if you're familiar with very much attachment theory, but
Secure
uh,
and insecure.
yeah, and attachment theory essentially puts forth the idea that like who we are and our sense of self and then our sense to others is formed through core relationships, and we're attached. And so
Right.
between the two of them, they've been moving psychology from what's considered one person psychology to two person psychology. And so one person psychology would sound like this, would sound like self agency, self efficacy, self actualization, self esteem, self history, all those things. And basically, when we started scanning the brain in the 90s,
Hmm.
neuroscientists did, we basically discovered, not we, because I'm not a neuroscientist, they basically discovered we don't have any DNA to regulate ourselves.
I've
And
heard that.
why that's so key is because that basically means one person's psychology is like flat earth. It's you have kind of a sense of things, but it's not actually truly accurate to reality. Reality is
Hmm.
two-person psychology, which is self-other worth, self-other esteem, self-other agency,
Hmm.
self-other history. And so when I'm talking with clients about this, because everybody, the pursuit of being independent and self-sufficient is at an all-time high, it seems, right? But
Yeah.
this is the same pursuit that we've got in Genesis 3, though, right? Genesis
Right.
3, Adam and Eve are going, the temptation is, you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. You won't need him.
Hmm.
You will be enough in and of yourself, right? So there's self-sufficiency has been one of the greatest lies that has been propagated literally since the beginning of humanity, right?
Hmm.
And it's continuing, right? And we've seen it all throughout. We've seen it all throughout. And so, but it's great because neuroscience is catching up finally, which is, took a sweet time, but it's catching up and basically realizing, from conception, which takes two, right? And then baby starts to develop inside the womb. and then baby comes out of the womb, and what's the first thing that we do with baby is we put baby onto mother's chest, right?
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is we realize that there's this need for the other, not just the self, but now the other, right?
Hmm.
And so, and it's hilarious to me because our society has basically taught us that we grow out of that need somehow, right?
Hmm.
That that to be an adult means that you never need anyone ever. And it's got just enough truth in it, because maturity is to be able to become established enough and strong enough that you can then take care of yourselves in some way. But even more so, maturity is now I can start to be a haven and stability for others, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Hmm.
so it's got just enough truth in it to sound great. But even then, as adults, we still are in a place of uh, real intense need.
Yeah.
Uh,
Totally.
but we kick against that. We kick
Uh-huh.
against that. And so um, so with two-person psychology, and everything in our society is still one-person psychology as its foundation and its basis, and that's why it breaks down, right? Like um, teaching people to, you just need to learn to regulate yourself. Well, the ability to regulate yourself comes from how other people have regulated with you.
Hmm.
And so uh, that's when you talk about identity, you're going, okay, like when I have people that come into my office for counseling, and they are dealing with depression and loneliness, and which is often kind of a sense of like wandering. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they should do, those types of things. Almost every single time there's isolation involved.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not even going to say almost every single time there's
Hmm.
isolation involved. And they've somehow picked up this idea that if I do not, if I cannot just exist on an island by myself, then there's something wrong with me.
Right.
But then they also long for other people in connection. And so they're conflicted, not essentially knowing what to do with the fact that they need, but then they're supposed to not need,
Yeah.
and then they don't know who they are. And so we actually know that when we have somebody struggling with a sense of identity, we can actually look back and see where in childhood we didn't have enough regulation from mom and dad, we consider co-regulation,
Yeah.
that created a stable sense of self. But that stable sense of self has to be derived from the sense of the other to the self.
How is that different than like codependency?
And that's a great question, because a lot of people think there's only like two sides of that spectrum, where there's
Right.
independence versus codependence, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so in the psychological community, we would say that what is healthy is what's called interdependence.
Yeah.
Um, and so codependence is essentially not knowing where who you are ends and
Hmm.
where the next person begins.
Hmm.
And so, but that's, I think
So
I meant,
so basically like it's the ability to what we're striving for in terms of interdependence is this ability to be have a clear sense of like where you sort of stop and where the other person begins, but at the same time, um, both acknowledging and accepting the dependence that you have on the other and the dependence that they also have on you, kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the last thing you had said was that interdependence is kind of knowing the end of where you are and where somebody else begins. And I would even say interdependence is the key is flexibility. So what you'll notice with an unhealthy sense of independence and an unhealthy sense of codependence is the rigidity. And so I don't know who I am outside of this one relationship, or I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to be anything but who I am, and nobody's going to ever affect me, right? The
Hmm.
rigidity on either side is what is really unhealthy. Interdependence is the ability to interact between both, knowing that there's ways that you need to depend on others, but also then walking in independence as well. It's the
Hmm.
flexibility is really what
Hmm.
that is, and so that's the part that a lot of people don't realize is that and often it's a reaction, right? So like they are feeling so isolated and alone that they react so intensely and grab on codependently to somebody else because they're afraid, if I lose this person, I'll lose whoever I am, right?
Right, right.
Um,
That's
and
sort of
then,
like the insecure attachment of like I think there's the three. There's avoidant, anxious, and fearful.
yeah, so you would call that like an anxious pursuer, right? Who is
Uh-huh.
just, I don't know who I am without you, so I've always got to have you.
Right.
Um, and so then the other side of it is people have hurt me, people haven't cared for me, I'm not safe with other people, so I'm just going to learn to be fine by myself.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that would be more of like an avoidant, right? And
Hmm.
so the ability to go, okay, secure attachment, what it actually looks like is flexibility. It actually looks like the ability to hear the other person and help meet their needs, and be vulnerable enough to let them meet your needs, but
Hmm.
also be able to walk out, and realize that you probably can't pull all of who you are from this one person, and
Hmm.
so you're able to flexibly shift over to another person, and that's why there's kind of a need for tribe, right? Community.
Hmm.
Like I dearly love my wife, but to put the weight of understanding who I am and my sense of worth and purpose on her alone would be just suffocating for her.
Hmm.
And so I need to have interactions with others, friends, right, where there's this dynamic of my sense of self is reflected through multiple relationships.
Hmm. It's interesting. Like we're talking about the need for multiple relationships there. Um, and going back to kind of the original question of like, can you I mean, I doubt that anybody has like a perfect understanding of themselves or their identity. I don't even really know what that means. Like
Yep.
complete knowledge. I'm not sure what that would even be.
Heaven.
It seems like there's some kind of progressiveness to it though. Like there's more you can learn to really know yourself and to know other people. I wonder though too about there's like the sort of thought experiment of like a person alone on an island that's totally physically separated, no communication, right?
Right.
But then a lot of what you just brought up in terms of like one person psychology, it that really seems to resonate a lot with the term radical individualism. I'm sure you've probably heard that. It was probably developed in maybe the 90s or something, um, from a sociologist. There was a particular sociologist, I don't remember the name, but they coined this term radical individualism. And it's sort of like the way that I've heard it defined, is elevating the needs, wants, desires of the individual above those of basically any other group, whether it's a family or a church or a school or a business or a government or just whatever, is sort of like the focus of it. And consistent with that, there's also this really interesting dynamic with identity where it's like, well, like kind of what I think what the picture you're painting is that these kind of healthy attachments, these secure attachments of interdependence are one, they're just the reality of being a person, right?
Right.
But also those are the channels through which our sense of self, our identity, flows. I don't know that I'm not really sure what to do with like I don't know if we completely get our identity from like any other one person or group, but there's definitely like a real um uh, essential, I'll say, role of those relationships in a person's sense of self being formed or discovered or uncovered, if you will.
Right.
Um, but then there's also with radical individualism, there's this pressure of like, well, I need to figure out who I am, like it's like on my own.
Right.
And then once I've arrived at this conclusion of who I am, I'm going to announce that to the group. And
Right.
now the pressure is you have to accept who I say that I am.
Right.
And any like objection to that is now this kind of like cultural, it's like immoral, right?
Right.
It's unethical to try to
Right.
resist, or not accept what somebody else says that they are, who they are.
They call it
And
being intolerant, but you're right. It's treated as an ethical or a moral violation.
yeah, yeah. But what I'm wondering too is that for people that, they go down this path because they think like this is the way that I'm going to be enlightened. I'm going to find joy and fullness of life and really get in touch with who I am and live my best life and all that all those phrases that we have. But then it's like it's interesting too because it's really unstable. And I think that maybe there's a potential for a lot of anxiety and depression to develop from that because if it's true that I created myself and I discovered myself and I'm announcing who I am to everybody else and I'm expecting that they, receive that and accept that. There's no It's all totally self-referential. There's
Right.
no there's no bigger foundation for
Yeah.
yourself than you and your own best understanding. And okay, well, you're going to go through life, right? Challenges are going to come up. Things are going to oppose and confront whatever that truth is you've believed about yourself. If there's no deeper foundation than just, well, this is what I've decided, that's just like seems like a recipe for being really unstable and just kind of like, buffeted by the waves of life, if you will, like when the winds pick up and the storms come and the swells get high on the, open seas as you're sailing along. I mean, you're just like totally vulnerable to your boat being flooded and turned over and just, drowning.
Right.
Um,
The picture I often think of is like, have you ever seen a house that's built like on a river on stilts?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And and we use this imagery for a number of different things. One of the main ones we use it for was with organizing principles, but that's a whole nother topic. But uh, you think about, through childhood, you need, multiple caretakers to help you. We have teachers, we have different people besides mom or dad, grandparents, potentially all these different people and you've got all these stilts. And then we reach a certain point where we basically believe that maturity is to go and to knock out every other stilt except for one that's supposed to be holding up this large structure.
yeah,
And that's what people do with identity, right? And so and it's not even like, it's interesting you're talking about that. It's not even what people say, it's the interaction with people that gives you the sense of identity.
yeah,
And I think about Paul, right? And as believers, you and I, there's identity can't be divorced from the idea of who we are in Christ, right?
sure, yeah,
And so Paul talks about the idea of who you are is now hidden in Christ. And why didn't Paul say who you are has been declared to you by Christ?
hmm,
Who you are has been pronounced and authorized by Jesus, right? But he's literally saying that who you are is enveloped in the relationship, in the other,
hmm,
right?
right, hmm,
And so And what's interesting is that we actually have, again, more neuroscience. We have a system in our brain called the mirror neuron system that runs right along the top portion of our brain. And that is only activated through really like safe and good connection with another person.
Yeah.
And the reason why they call it the mirror neuron network is because you understand yourself better as it's activated.
Right. Hmm.
And so, like looking at Genesis 2, God creating Adam and then forming Eve out of the rib. And Adam's response, we've always joked about, oh, whoa, man, whatever, But Adam's response is so interesting because in the Hebrew, he says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And the words there, he goes, uh, ish, which is man, and then isha, which is essentially of man. And if you look at that, it's very poetic and it's very reflective. He's basically saying like I see myself finally.
Yeah.
He had spent all this time, with the animals, and it says there's not a suitable helper. He's basically going like, none of these people bring me to me, right?
Hmm.
And I can give them names and I can care for them, but like there's not a mutuality of growth, of
Yeah.
understanding, of
Hmm.
discovery together, right? And so when he says isha, which is the Hebrew there, man, woman, he's basically going, we are each other. We see each other. We discover each other. We know each other now because of who we are. And I actually, my mentor, Dr. Manica, and I think that was probably the first time the mirror neuron system activated was this sense of I see myself, right? And and
Interesting. Yeah.
um and so we have such a sense of uh, the people around us and the community around us needing the interaction. And it's not just the pronouncement, because notice how so many people, based on trying to find an identity these days, will look for a label or a pathology or
Hmm.
I'm this, and they say. And so whether it's gender stuff, whether it's
Hmm.
politics stuff, whether it's
Hmm.
all these different things, and they look for a pronouncement, right? They look
Right.
for
Right.
a
Hmm.
declaration of who they are.
Yeah.
But the only reason why they're declaring who they are is probably because they found some kind of connection and bond in that
Yeah.
community
Right.
that has activated that system and has helped them go, I'm discovering more about myself. I see
Right.
myself.
Yeah. I wonder too, because it seems like that I don't say most, but a good deal of human choices and behavior is sort of motivated by this desire to get rid of bad feelings. Like
Totally.
I'm feeling nervous, anxious, scared, hurt. Um, and so I'm looking for a way to get rid of that thing, to make that go away so that I can get back to, recenter on feeling stable, a sense of peace, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's also driving some of that too, where it's like, um, maybe I don't even feel that great in this group, this ultra hard line
Right.
political group or whatever, but I feel overall better there than outside of that. And so it's going
Yeah.
to kind of, it's sort of almost like a rain shed. It's like the, or that's not the right term, rain shed. It's like the kind of like the region of like the surrounding geography, it like funnels water down to like a low point, if you will. And it's kind of like that where it's like, it's all the other options that might be available to me, this one here, it's the low point, it's the place of greatest peace,
Right.
even if it's still dysfunctional.
It's
um
something.
I often like wonder like what is it that really drives that, because based on our conversation so far it seems like you're kind of looking at this angle and this angle over here and this angle. You start to get a better picture of like just human design and nature.
Yeah.
So it's like our even just our biology is saying like here's the path to a truly healthy sense of self that's built on something more than just what you've kind of concocted,
Right.
right? There's other trusted relationships and voices that are helping to shape that, or at least providing really honest, true feedback. Like, hey, here's how we're experiencing you. It's making us scared.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's maybe okay. So I need to adjust. Maybe what I'm doing is maybe what I think is true, but the way that it's coming across is not helpful.
Right.
And there's that kind of refining that happens. It seems like that's like the biology is just saying like that is the path forward. But then the great tendency seems to be like we go to all these other things to almost avoid that. Like we don't. Is it maybe it's just because it's too vulnerable? Like we're scared, and so we feel like the really true biological healthy path forward, maybe the only path forward, is scary for some reason. And so we go to like, the hardline Democrats or Republicans or whatever kind of other movement that it might be,
Right.
gangs, different kind of gangs, a gang mentality, if you will, to
Right.
sort of derive our sense of self. And any of those environments, though, they're not really built around wanting you to be the true version of you.
Yeah.
They seem to be more focused on other goals. Like, we need you to look like this.
Right.
And if you don't really do this, look like this well enough, now it's insecure because you can risk being really rejected. And when you are, it's like, well, that was the only thing that I believed was like true and got my sense of self from. And now they're saying, like, you know, I'm really not one of them for whatever reason. And I don't know what it is. It's just it seems like it's kind of almost like when Jesus said, like, um, narrow is the gate, right, that leads to life, and it's or the path that leads to life, and few are those who find it.
Right.
Broad is the way that leads to destruction. It kind of seems like that same, you know, parable analogy where there's just so few people that seem to be really leaning into um, these kind of secure attachments, or just even know how to find them, how to create them,
Right.
and to do life that way. I wonder, like, why is that? Like, if it's really the truth and the real way, the
Right.
way of just human biology, like, what is it that interrupts that so much for people and puts them down all these other paths that are either severely limiting or destructive?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question. I don't know if I really have an answer or just more of exploring it really, but it seems like we've been fighting our design since Genesis 3, right?
Yeah.
Where,
Like meaning like we want to define sort of good and evil for ourselves.
yeah, and we want to define ourselves for ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And um, this unwillingness to just be willing, like to just be defined and to be led and to be directed and to be, to operate in the design we've been given.
Hmm.
There's such a fight against that because there's a lie that we're somehow not free if we're going according to somebody else's direction.
Hmm.
Um, and it just seems like such a lie. Like, there's a reason why Jesus called the devil the father of lies. Like it's such a potent. I was just processing this morning in my own heart. It seems like, obviously there's some people who hyper spiritualize all sorts of things, right? Where, I stubbed my toe and therefore like a demon made me stub my toe or
Right.
whatever.
The devil's under every rock, basically, kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah. But it seems, the more I just study scripture, his main method and tool is deception.
Mm.
And
Define that a little bit. Is that, what does that mean? It's like, it's not necessarily a complete, like, untruth or lie, but
It's
it's
the best
it's a
lies have just
twisting. It's
enough
like a
truth to them.
twisting of things.
Right. They have just enough truth in them to make it palatable and to
Uh,
make it, to make it taste something that, like, I want to take a full bite into this, right?
yeah, seems good.
Yeah. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it's just seems like deception is just the way, if people can start to, if he can just kind of throw a thought in there, I've often, I don't know if you've ever read Screw Tape Letters by
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis, and you get those interactions. Essentially, what they're doing is they're trying to influence thought life. They're trying to influence
Hmm.
based on fears and hopes and
Hmm.
and desires and dreams and the lack of those things or the threat of those things. And so there's such a fear, it seems, that these lies tend to drive people into the arms of others who have already swallowed the lie,
Hmm.
that, like, you'll find everything of who you are in this group. You'll find everything of who you are in this label, in this. I love you using the idea of gang, really, because, like, you look around and I could name, as soon as you said that, I could name multiple movements and groups that if you wore the right colors or if you wore the right symbols, all of a
Yeah.
sudden people know you're part of that group, and it's really a
Yeah.
gang, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we see that kind of fierceness and volatility when somebody threatens the ideals of the gang, right? And
Right.
so,
Because you're
uh,
threatening their sense of self at that point too.
exactly, you're not just threatening an idea; you're threatening who they've completely constructed their entire sense of being around.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's like that house with a single, still that's trying to, and the
Yeah.
river rises at times and gets a bit rough, and you
So,
know,
and then, so by that analogy, is the way out of that kind of a situation, like the gang mentality where I get my sense of identity from, they've got one stilt, right? It's the gang.
right?
It seems like the only way out of that is more stilts of kind of secure attachments, right? So, I mean, in terms of like, if let's say like one day you have a realization, I've been on this spectrum of my relationship with a group from kind of like I'm a appreciate I appreciate it to I'm fully in. It's like my true north. It's where I get my sense of self and identity from.
Right.
You're somewhere in there. The way out of that into, really truly discovering yourself through these kinds of secure, attachments that you've articulated would be like you have to actually go create them. You have to go get these other kind of relationships,
Yeah.
probably outside of that group, whatever it is, to be able to have a chance. It's
Yeah.
going to be rocky, but to have a chance, you're going to need those kind of relationships. And probably the more, the better. More stilts equals more stability, more opportunity to really, multiple perspectives, especially when you get two, three, four, independent people harmonizing
Yeah.
and saying, here's what we see in you. Here's the potential. Here's the gifts and the impact that we see you having and the joy that you're bringing in this particular way. That's powerful, like,
Yeah.
I'm wondering just in the last few minutes that we have here,
Yeah.
um, what has that been like? What has that been like for you? Have you ever been in a place in your life where like maybe you were getting your identity from a group in a way that wasn't really like healthy, like the gang kind of
Sure.
approach? And then if you were like, what has that kind of looked like for you to move away from that to get a truer sense of Matt Kimmel?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if there's any human movement, group, or even person that can solely handle the weight of supporting any other person's identity.
Yeah.
Um, the only place I found that like this can bear it is in Jesus, right?
Hmm.
But what's interesting too, though, is that, like, the the New Testament is full of admonitions to fellowship with one another and to build one another up and to encourage one another and to gather together. And so it's so funny, especially when I hear people are like, all I need is me and Jesus. And I'm like, well, then you didn't listen to Jesus, because he said you need other people too, right? Like, and so like I need Jesus, and then whoever else he brings into my life, and tells me I need.
Yeah.
Um, and so what that's looked like for me, mentors have been incredibly important for me. I had 7 different men that I had met with when I was dating my wife before I proposed, and met with all of them before I proposed, and just talked through it and wanted to get perspective, wanted to get
Hmm.
wisdom and clarity. And a lot of people tell me, well, I just don't have anybody in my life like that. Oh, that doesn't mean I just necessarily did. I went after it, right? I just
Right.
and one of the defining things for me, Jesus said you'll know someone by their fruit. And
Hmm.
so looking at their life and going, what they have and are cultivating, I really would like to have and cultivate in
Yeah.
my life.
Hmm.
And so, when I did that, all 7 of those men, only one of them had been married for less than 20 years.
Mm.
Um, and so not just saying that just longevity is the key, but
Right.
longevity has something to say for it, right?
Yeah. It's part of
Um,
it.
it's a big part of it. And
Yeah.
so the only other one that hadn't been married for 20 years is my brother, and he's just a stud. So,
Yeah.
um, but going after people that you go, man, the way that they have even
Hmm.
cultivated their own communities, the way that they have. I just recently reached out to a mentor that I used to meet with, and I just recently reached out again and said, hey, I need to start meeting with you again.
Mm.
Like there's more spiritual development in me that I need, and I'm not going to get there on my own. Um, and so, but I see it in you, and I experience it in you, and there's fruit, and it's good, and so I'm going to go after that.
Mm.
Uh, and so, but often that comes through experiencing some kind of pain, some kind of loneliness, some kind of hurt,
Hmm.
bringing it to Jesus in prayer, and then opening myself. And I really believe that there was a sense of more thoughts coming into my head of like, you should probably, I really need to start meeting with a couple of other guys again. I need to start
Mm.
to hear that mentorship and to be challenged and those types of things. And I think that's part of how God directs.
Yeah.
So I need Jesus, and I need the people that he tells me I need, right?
Yeah.
And specifically the ones that they have, very simply, they have what I want. Um, so has that been similar for you?
I think we might have to do that on part two. I've got like 3 minutes. There's
Yeah,
no way
you
I
got to
could.
run. We're good.
I think what you just said is a great place to end this. And I still think next time, I want to answer that question. But I also want to jump into, and get your thoughts on Numbers 13 and 14, because I think that story to me is so fascinating about, a group's identity and, um, when God has a destiny for them, like this
Mm,
amazing gift,
yeah.
and they can't receive it
Yeah.
because of their identity.
Well, yeah, let's explore that.
So anyways, I'd love to get your thoughts on that too. So thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Well, it was good to talk with you today, Lee.
Yeah, it
It's
was,
always fun.
it was. Take care, man.
Good
All
to
right,
see you.
bye.